Welcome everybody to our How to Become Employee-Owned webinar. My name is Jodie Johnston. I'm your host for today. So we're here for about an hour and a half, and essentially we're going to go through a little bit about the Employee Ownership Association, who we are, and then we're going to jump into a panel discussion to really help you guys understand a little bit more about the process of employee ownership and transitioning to employee ownership. It's going to be a panel discussion. And once we've had that discussion, opportunities for Q&A are going to be there throughout. But we're also then going to go into smaller little breakout rooms so that you have the opportunity to ask particular questions that you want to or didn't get the chance to during our main session. And we'll have you away by 12:30. So our session today, as I said, is an opportunity to get a first-hand insight into the process of becoming employee-owned. It's going to be in two sections. So we're going to have our panel discussion, as I mentioned, where I'll be facilitating a discussion around employee ownership, around the key insights and considerations about becoming employee-owned. We've also got first-hand experience from a business that's become employee-owned. So again, your opportunity to ask them questions around what it felt for them, what did they do, what were the key things that they did. The breakout rooms are going to be there for networking. I would say that if you can put yourselves on mute just during the kind of panel discussion as we've got individuals speaking, just to reduce the distractions. But of course, when we go into the breakout rooms, that's your opportunity to take yourselves off mute and just really join in the conversation. So the first half of our session is going to be recorded. And that's really so that we can share the learning with our members in our member networking platform, the EOA. Appreciate that there's often a sense of confidentiality that you want to maintain if you are currently exploring employee ownership and don't want others to know. If you want to keep your cameras off, you're more than welcome to do that. And if you want to change your names, again, that's absolutely fine. The networking session that we'll do, there will be no recording in there. So that opportunity to be a little less anonymous and ask your questions is there as well. Now we have got, we've got two guest speakers with you today. And what I will say is that we all love engagement. We all love seeing how the things that we're saying are landing. So I'm going to encourage everyone to use the React function, which if you haven't got it up already, if you look at your toolbar across the bottom of your screen, there is a little heart, and click that, that's your reaction. So giving people a thumbs up, or something that they've said that you really loved, always welcome. We're also going to use our chat panel for the Q&A section today. So again, if you can't see that to the right of your screen, if you click on the bottom toolbar, click on chat, it will bring up a chat box and you'll be able to put your questions in there. If you have got a question for a particular individual, just start with their name as you're putting the question in. And we'll know that it's for them. And actually, if you've got a particular bit of feedback or you've got an insight that you want to share within the chat as well, please do so. As I said, we want to try and make it as interactive as possible. So I'm just going to stop sharing very quickly. And just before I tell you a little bit about the EO sector and where we are, I just want to get a sense of who we've got in the room. So I'm going to throw up poll, and I just want you to answer where you are in your employee ownership journey at the moment and how much do you know about employee ownership. It just gives myself and also our guest speakers an understanding of who we've got here today. Okay, so I'll leave that up for 30 seconds or so people can answer. And I have to say, it's wonderful seeing all the different people around the room. Wow. So we'll share the results, but at the moment, it looks like we've got quite a big population who are in the early stages of exploring. So that's fantastic. This is the best place for you. And quite a lot of people are saying, I know a little, but not in depth. That's really interesting. When I joined the EO sector about 5 years ago now, actually a lot of the conversations I used to have were, I've not heard of this. I know John Lewis and that's about it. So the fact that actually there is some understanding in the room is fantastic. Okay, I am going to share the results so you can all see for yourselves in terms of where people are as well. So great to see. There is no one who said, I never heard of it, which is brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my slides. Great. So if you're, as I said, in the early stages of exploring employee ownership, and if you do decide that EO is the best option for you, you're in very, very good company. We've got just under 2,500 businesses that are employee owned across the UK. Quite a lot of those businesses are within the small to medium section, because actually it's a really, really good succession option for those size of businesses. But at the same time, we've got a number of large businesses that are employee owned as well. And what's really interesting is you'll see the different sectors that tend to become employee owned. These are the top 5. But what I will say is that in my time, I've come across just about every sector in terms of businesses that are employee owned. And I mean, it's incredible, from food businesses, manufacturing, you've got, your professional services. Yes, there are some that it's perhaps more suited for in terms of that the sectors that you'll see. But I will say, name me an industry, and I'm sure we can find you a business that's employee owned. And actually within those 2,500 businesses, we have also got 335,000 people who are employee owners. So these are individuals that have a more meaningful stake and say in the business that they're working from. And that for us, for the EOA, is a huge impact in terms of the societal impact it has. And the other thing that, that I will say is that we often hear those anecdotes. We hear lots of great stories around how employee ownership has affected a business. So we'll hear about the kind of innovation, the productivity that businesses quite often get when they become employee owned. And so a couple of years ago, we thought, well, can we change these anecdotal stories into real hard evidence? And so we did some research called the Knowledge Program Research. And actually what we found is that businesses are 8 to 12% more productive if they're employee owned. And so you've got some of these absolute impacts of being able to give employees more stake, more say in the work that they do. And, whilst there is that productivity and that discretionary effort, you've also then got businesses putting more effort into their employees, more investment in training, more profit share, and that has those performance and revenue boosts as well. So again, we can, we'll share some of this information with you in our wrap up, but the Knowledge Program Research is great for if you're thinking about employee ownership in your business, really understanding the benefits that can be gained. But just to talk a little bit about the EOA. So we are a membership organisation, but really, one of the things that we are very passionate about is growing employee ownership within the sector itself. And we've got over 800 members who come to us, they work with us, they get information around best practice, how to develop really great employee ownership. And most recently, you'll see the entertainer logo here. I have to say the excitement that my kids, I say maybe more me than my kids had when we heard about the entertainer was fantastic, because actually, when I look at the range of businesses that are becoming employee owned, I suddenly see I could do a whole Christmas shop with employee-owned businesses, and that's a great feeling, certainly for me working here. So in terms of membership and how we help our businesses deliver great employee ownership, this is one of the events that we hold as part and parcel of our membership. So you get opportunity for events, networking opportunities, come and meet different employee-owned businesses, share insight, get their experience. We also have a fantastic online networking platform called the EO Hub. And this is where you can come and ask questions. You can ask questions anonymously if you don't feel like you want to share who you are. But we've also got communities where you can come in. So we've got a community that's setting up for founding owners of businesses. So that is your opportunity to really ask those questions around what was it like? What are the tips? What are the, what worked? What didn't work? We've got lots of resources there as well. The other thing that we do is we also have training and development. So my role is EO Development Manager. And I'm basically responsible for our learning portfolio to make sure that as an employee-owned business, you have the right skills, knowledge, and experience to really make this business go. If you could put yourself on mute, just so that we can reduce the noise. Thank you very much. So I mentioned learning. I just want to go through some of the courses that we've got coming up. And these are all really centered around, you can take these at any time of your EO journey, but if you are exploring, if you are just about to become employee-owned, these, for me, are the foundations of the knowledge that you'll need. Our EOT Trustee Masterclass is really designed for those individuals who are founding owners, and are sitting on the EOT board, vendor management trustees. So if you sit on the management board, but also on the EOT board, this is a great opportunity for you to really understand the governance and the best practice. And if you are an independent trustee, again, this is a great opportunity to really up your skills in terms of great governance. We've also got the EO mindset, which is a behavioral model that's been derived from this knowledge program research that I mentioned earlier on. And this course is really how you start to help everybody in the business work towards this culture of collective ownership. So actually, you do get that discretionary effort within the business. And also in January, we've got our flagship How to Be an Effective Employee Trustee. And this course is this is a course that we started with because this is what everybody wanted from the very beginning. And it's really about helping that individual or individuals that sit on the EOT board, but perhaps never had that management experience. It's really helping them get the skills, the knowledge, and the confidence needed to do that. We've also got a whole host of events. We are at the tail end of our events program for this year, but we are going to come out very soon with all the events that we're going to be doing over the coming year. So we have got a face-to-face event happening in the Southwest, and the venue is fantastic. National Self-Build and Renovation Centre. It's their employee-owned. It's a fantastic space that you can go and network with other businesses. And finally, we've also got our EOA conference. Now, this is the place if you want to come in, immerse yourself into everything employee ownership, but really fast track your knowledge and understanding and exploration of EO. So we've got sessions that are absolutely geared up towards those individuals that are exploring employee ownership. And by the end of it, you will have some absolutely fantastic stories, some great experience, and some tools and tips that you can go away with and really make EO work for you. So that's 25th, 26th of November, Telford International Centre. If you scan the QR code, you'll be able to get lots more information. Okay, I think I've done enough talking now. So I want to hand over to our panel and just let them introduce themselves. We're going to have Robert Postlethwaite first, who's founding owner of Postlethwaite Solicitors, who themselves are employee-owned and they support businesses becoming employee-owned. And then we've also got Jude Bond-Kelly, who's managing director of Hawthorn Estates, and they became employee-owned very recently. And it really was that story of succession. So I'm going to hand over to Robert to introduce himself, and then I'll hand over to Jude.
Okay. Thank you very much, Yogi. If you wouldn't mind sharing my first slide, I promise we're not going to overwhelm you with PowerPoint slides, but I have put together a very small number of slides, which, excuse me, just give you an introduction to our firm and explain a little bit about how employee ownership works. My aim is to demonstrate that, in essence, a company moving to employee ownership, the moving parts are actually very small in number, and the transaction to change your company to becoming employee owned is at heart a very simple thing to do. Of course, there's many more things to think about, which we'll be talking about in the course of the webinar. So if you don't mind, let me just start by giving you a quick introduction to our firm. Our role in life really is to help companies become employee owned. So that's what we do. Since the Employee Ownership Trust came into existence in 2014, we've helped just about now 200 companies move to ownership by an Employee Ownership Trust. And in 2023, we became owned by an Employee Ownership Trust ourselves. If you have an appetite for reading more about employee ownership, we have also written a book, which is called the Employee Ownership Manual. And if anyone's interested, then I'm sure we can provide details on how to order that from the publisher or indeed on Amazon. Yogi, could we have the next slide, please? This slide looks at when a company might find that an employee ownership trust is an attractive succession solution. I'm just going to pick up maybe two or three of the things that we often hear from business owners when we have an initial conversation with them. So looking at the top right, what often comes up in conversation is the feeling that if we make our employees the owners, that does have the potential to improve our company's productivity and performance. And as Yogi mentioned, there has been some research which shows that that does tend to be the case. Often, owners have perhaps had a conversation with their directors, their senior management team, kind of the next generation, about whether they would wish to mount a management buyout. But that's actually it's very uncommon now that there's an appetite to do that. And also it can be very hard to source any external funds to fund a management buyout. So we're seeing that the prevalence of management buyouts as opposed to employee ownership is much less common than it used to be. And then what we sometimes also hear is, well, we've thought about selling the company to a third-party buyer. We think there are possibly buyers out there, but we've really struggled to find one where there'll be a good match with our business. We want the business to carry on being independent. We feel we've built up something of value with our employees. We don't want to see it sold and then split up and people made redundant or jobs transferred to a different location 200 miles away. I haven't given you everything that comes up in conversation, but those are just some examples of the things we hear which are clearly encouraging companies to look at an employee ownership trust as a succession solution. Next slide, please, Yogi. A little bit about the benefits. I'm not going to talk you through all of these, but let's maybe just pick up a small number for each of these three categories. So for the business owner, it does enable you to realise the profits and the value that's been built up in the business. It does enable you to create a legacy, peace of mind that the business is in good hands, and there are also tax reliefs. So a number of potential benefits for owners. Also good for the business because it does create a solid foundation for future growth, and other benefits, for example, preservation of values and culture. What about the employees? Well, they don't experience any change to their employment terms, and they still carry on working for the same company. It's just the owner that's changed. They can receive a bonus, which is income tax free, so long as it's paid to all employees. But there's nothing to say that you can't have some additional reward arrangement for your key people, if that's something that is felt to be important. Next slide, please, Yogi. Okay, lots of detail here, but and probably best to save this for later when you've got slightly slower time opportunity to look at the slides. But what we've done here is compare an EOT as a way of exiting from a business with a management buyout, a third-party sale, a share buyback, or worst case scenario, putting the company into liquidation. Next slide, please. Okay, so I said that in essence, an employee ownership trust was a fairly simple transaction. And this slide aims to demonstrate that. So I'm just going to very briefly walk you through the main steps here. So if you look at the center of the slide, we've created this thing called an employee ownership trust. And what that does, under step 1 in the top left, it buys shares in the company from the owners. So the ownership change takes place immediately, but in all probability, the purchase price will be paid in installments. So step 1, owners sell their shares to the employee ownership trust. Step 2 happens immediately. The employees become the owners of the company, but through the employee ownership trust. Step 3, over a period of time, the company makes payments to the employee ownership trust, funded out of its available cash and profits. That will often take several years. And then step 4, each time the trust has received a payment of that kind, it uses it to pay an installment of purchase price to the owners.
Webinar. I don't know my Paulus.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, I'm on a webinar. I'll come find you after I've posted on.
Okay, final slide from me. This just sets out the key steps and timings if you do decide an employee ownership trust is right for your company. So rocking through these very briefly, we'd start with some design and look at the feasibility of an EOT in your company. We'd then move on to seek a tax clearance from HMRC, draft the main documents, which we then discuss with you, make sure they work in the way that you want them to. Moving on to a couple of very important communication exercises. Firstly, making sure your leadership team are aware of what's happening, and then also communicate to your wider employees. You will need to have an independent valuation of the company. That's essential now. So that will need to be finalised. You'll need to appoint people to run the employee ownership trust called the trustees. You'll then set up your employee ownership trust, signing a document called a trust deed. The trust will then agree to buy your shares, signing a share sale agreement. The company is now owned by an employee ownership trust. If you wish to, you can also establish some kind of share incentive plan or other long-term reward for your key employees. That doesn't always happen, but sometimes that's felt to be important. Okay, that's the end of my intro. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Robert. I'm going to hand over to Jude.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Judith Kelly. I'm the Managing Director of Hawthorn Estates. We are a small family-run business. We've been operating for over 40 years. We deal with building insurance claims. So someone has a problem with the property, we go out and do the work. We are governed by postcode areas. There are a lot of different companies in the industry. So when it came to making a decision of how we take the company forward, reduce the time that we spend in here, we did first of all look at selling the business, but that didn't become an option, mainly because most of the companies that work with us would just take our postcodes, so it wouldn't even be an option. So our next option was to do an EOT, and we've worked closely with Robert to bring all of that together, and that started in April. So and we're here now where we are. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So we're going to move into the panel discussion section. So you will hear a little bit more of Hawthorn Estates' story. You'll hear a little bit more from Robert. So if I can have both individuals up, and what we're going to do is we're going to tackle a couple of topics, and so we're going to look at a little bit more of a deep dive into what employee ownership is, some of the key rules governing it, why, benefits, and then a little bit about succession. I'm going to start with you, Robert. I know you gave us a really lovely whistle-stop tour in terms of the process. So you mentioned some of the governance elements in terms of the different actors. Could you tell us a bit about who runs the employee ownership trust? Because that's often a question that we get asked.
Yes, it's very important to make the distinction between who's running the company and who's running the employee ownership trust and what their role is. So just as you will currently have in your own company directors running the business, that will continue to be the case. So any company, including one owned by an employee ownership trust, will have directors who run the company on a day-to-day basis. But what you will also have is trustees, and their role is to run the trust. So what does that actually involve? To a large extent, their job is to make sure that the company is being run successfully by the directors. So you could describe it as a kind of oversight role, if you like. In our company, we're owned by an employee ownership trust. We have trustees, and our trustee role, and I think this is very, very common throughout most employee-owned companies, is probably two things. One is, as I've said, to make sure that the directors are doing a decent job, but also to make sure that the employees are engaged as the owners, so that they understand what's happening in the business, they understand what they can do to make the business perform better, and overall, legally, the trustee's duty is to do the best they can for the employees. And what that basically means is making sure the company's thriving and making sure that the employees are engaged as owners.
Fantastic. And so you've talked a little bit about some of the benefits there. What other benefits are there for the business becoming employee owned? So you mentioned the fact that you've got employee owners that can be more engaged. Any other benefits? And also any risks that are involved as well. So it's quite good to get that kind of balance.
Yes. So let's start with benefits, but it's important also to look at the risks. The main potential benefit for a company is the fact that if you get it right, you will have a significant number of employees, as close to all of them as you can possibly imagine, who've got a really keen interest in the company performing as well as it can, financially, but not necessarily just financially as well, because people do come to work for other reasons, and you really want them to enjoy and get satisfaction from their job. So that's an important characteristic that an employee ownership can also potentially help deliver. What about the risks? Well, I would say probably two main ones. If you're a seller, you remember in my slide I demonstrated that in most cases it'll probably be a few years before you've been fully paid out for your shares. So the risk for you is if the business performance deteriorates, then it's going to take you longer to get paid out for your shares. So it's really, to mitigate that risk, it's really important to be at the outset to be clear about what the prospects of the company are and its ability to fund payment of purchase price. The other potential risk is, and this is more like a lost opportunity, is it's really important for employee ownership to be successful to engage your employees. And if you don't do that, then you're significantly reducing the chances of success. So is that a risk? Yeah, it kind of is. The risk is that if you don't make the effort to engage your employees, then you won't see the benefits of employee ownership.
Yeah, thank you. And I love some of the points that you made there, and I think that the element around engaging employees and the success of the payments taking place in terms of the deferred consideration, that's a real kind of symbiotic relationship. Actually, if you've got really engaged employees that are working for the business, there's a higher chance of your employee-owned businesses working really well and being successful. But as an owner, it means that you've also got the confidence that any money that you've loaned will also get paid back. Right, we've got a couple of questions. We've got quite a few questions coming in through the chat. So I'm going to take a couple of those and ask them. Excuse me. One of the ones that I actually want to ask Jude about is quite a kind of operational element around the trustees, because Robert, you mentioned the makeup of the EOT board includes trustees. So Jude, how often do your trustees meet, and how many trustees sit on your EOT board?
So we have 3 trustees. One of them, the chair of trustees, is a consultant that we've used in the business for quite a long time. So he's got a good understanding of what we do and how we do it and what the industry is. So he's our chair. We have Angela, who is the office trustee. So she represents the office staff. We have Dave, who is our site representative. So we have site operatives as well. They meet on a quarterly basis. And that's generally how. But they'll then follow that up with providing information to the employees after the meeting and keep them locked with where we're at.
Absolutely, I think it feels like there is some preparation to do. There's some conversation to be had, and there's some follow up afterwards. So it's not overly onerous, but there is kind of activity that has that kind of regular cadence in it.
Yeah, keeps them up to date.
Fab. Okay, I've got a question for you, Robert, here around the shareholding. So how often do EOTs have some personal shareholders as well as the 51% shareholding of the EOT? So, and more importantly, does that mix of ownership work?
Yeah, great question. So one of the real beauties of the employee ownership trust is that it has very few moving parts. So it's a form of ownership that once you've set it up, is actually quite simple to administer. Whereas if you have many, many different individual shareholders, then you have to deal with joiners and leavers, and that can create quite a lot of administration, buying shares back from people and then issuing shares to new joiners. So it tends to be pretty uncommon to have very broad spread personal share ownership. But what we do see fairly commonly, probably in about half of the employee ownership trusts we've worked with, is some kind of personal share arrangement for members of the senior management team or the new cadre of directors. So that could, for example, be a share option plan, which gives those selected people a financial stake in the future success of the company.
And can existing shareholders or directors still be directors when the business becomes employee owned?
Yeah, absolutely can. I mean, very commonly, if you're selling your company to an employee ownership trust, so you're retiring as an owner, obviously, ultimately you'll probably also want to retire as a director, but that doesn't have to happen at the same time. So you can arrange leadership succession at a more leisurely pace if you wish to do that.
I've got a question around repayment terms here, actually, and I'm going to ask both of you. First, Robert, your kind of understanding of typically how long are repayment terms? And Jude, if you don't mind, maybe sharing a bit of your own experience around that repayment term.
Yes, it's a bit of a range. And I would say the range is probably between about 3 to 4 years, and then a maximum of 10 years. And that will depend on the company, its value and its cash flows and future profits.
It's dependent on the performance of the company and how well, for us, it's how well the industry is at the time. So we have monthly payments, but we're looking potentially about 6-7 years for payment to be repaid the way things are at the moment. But that can be dependent on the profitability at any point in time. So.
And Jude, how did you talk to your employee owners about that change and what that payment term means? How did that communication happen?
We'd had a lot of meetings, obviously with Robert beforehand, but when we finally decided to actually tell all of the employees, we always have an annual health and safety training day. So we decided we would get everybody together at that time and use that as a point to let them know what we were planning to do. It didn't happen straight away. That we still had probably another 8 months before the trust took over. But it gave all of the staff an opportunity to ask questions, find out what it meant. Robert had produced a full pack, an information pack that we could give to all of the employees so that if they did want to raise any queries, they could. So we just had a general discussion with all of them in the training day. So it was really useful. It's quite emotional, to be honest, because it was a big thing for my husband and myself. We've worked really hard to build the company. So when you're handing it over, it is a big decision. And it's something that you should really think about long and hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess what kind of questions did you get? Did you get a barrage of questions? Was it, later on that once people had a chance to think about it, that they came and asked questions?
It was more later on. I think they needed time for it to sink in. And we're still working on it now to make them realise that they are the owners of the company and it's their responsibility. It does take a while for it to sink in, and I think some accept it quicker than others, and some buy into it better than others. But I think that's what you'll get in any industry. We didn't get a massive amount of questions at the time. I think that the main one is what bonuses they could get that is tax-free, that they're more interested in, to be honest. It's a financial gain, isn't it? So, yeah. We're always open door policy to questions. So,
yeah. And it does. It that kind of highlights, I guess, the importance of communication. You know, you mentioned that Robert gave you a pack of information to go through. So, Robert, how, I guess, in terms of that overall transition process, where do you think that communication lies in terms of telling all the employees what's happening, and how much information, how much communication is enough?
Well, you would probably want to make your employee communication when you've reached the point where you're definitely confident that you're going to complete the EOT. So if it's just a sort of an idea, and you haven't actually worked out yet whether it's feasible, then that's probably a bit too early for your employee comms, and unless you really want to engage them in the whole process right from the start. So the best time to do it is probably when you've completed this process called getting an HMRC clearance, and you know that there's nothing in the way between where you are and being able to move to completion. So that's what I'd say about timing. Sorry, I've forgotten what your second question was. I was too busy thinking about the first one.
How much is too much?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And sorry. Well, as much as you feel comfortable with sharing. So a question we often get asked is, do we have to tell the employees how much the purchase price is? And the answer to that is no, you don't. The trustees of the EOT will need to know because they'll be being asked to sign the share purchase agreement, and they need to be very confident that they're paying the right price and not overpaying. So they definitely need to know what the price is. Wider employees, if you don't feel comfortable with them having that information, then you don't have to provide it.
Okay, thank you. And I have seen, I've seen examples of where businesses have, rather than kind of sharing the exact numbers, they might have like a bar or some kind of indicator that says, you know, here's when we're going to have paid off the amount, and here's kind of how we're working towards that in terms of a progress bar, like if you're downloading an app or something, and that can be at least a useful indicator for individuals as well. I've got a question for you, Judith, around when I guess you got people involved in knowing about exploring succession. So in advance of that health and safety training, who else knew that you were exploring employee ownership as succession?
The finance director, obviously because she needed to get all of the accounts together and provide the information so we could get the valuation done. We did have some outside help as well. We have a friend who'd already been involved, and he was a trustee of a previous EOT. So his advice was invaluable, and he helped us quite a lot through the way. We had approached potential trustees as well and asked them to keep it very quiet, and consultant as well. So they were involved, but nobody else knew about it before that. So we tried to reduce the amount of, we didn't want to panic people, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to tell everyone in one go, and give them all the opportunity to come back to us if they wanted to. So, it's the easiest way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there is that element, as Robert said, of knowing that actually this is a sure path, and you've got, you have to have the opportunity, I think, to get, to understand your own reasons and the story around why you're becoming employee owned, and also make sure that you've done some of that due diligence. You've got answers to some of the questions that you'll think you'll get asked, and so that gives the employees, I think, a sense of confidence and comfort that actually this isn't just something that you've stepped into. This is something that you've done and you've researched, and at the same time, I guess I would say there is an element of making sure that they know that you don't know everything. Is that something that that you kind of came across? Did you have opportunities where you went, actually, I don't know the answer to that particular question. We'll go away, we'll find out, and we'll come back to you?
Yeah, you're always going to come across that because it was all new to us as well. So we were learning as the process sort of rolled out. So, and Robert and his team were sort of really big support and help in the background, giving us that information. And like I say, the pack that they provided did cover everything really that the employees were likely to need to know. But also, if they wanted to come back and ask questions, then they could, because we did have several meetings to go over everything, because we all needed to be on the right track. So.
Fantastic. So I've got a question probably for you, Robert, here. So we've Simon's asked, assuming the process needs an accountant and a solicitor, is it typical to use existing accountant, or is it better to go to a specialist?
The financial aspect you will definitely need professional help with is evaluation of your company. Your own accountant may be able to do that. If they have valuation expertise and experience, then they may be well placed to help with that. If not, then you'll probably need to look to another firm which does have valuation expertise. But a bit more widely, what we do find is that where companies do work with their accountants, it's often really useful to have them as a kind of sounding board, because they often have a really good understanding of the company. They may have been companies' accountants for many years, maybe even decades. So they might be just very useful on the sidelines, asking pertinent questions and making sure that the company owners sort of definitely understand what they're doing and what questions they should be asking.
So I can do one question around bonuses, and then I want to talk a little bit about succession, because I think that's a really important part of the overall transition as well. So we've got someone asking if employees mind waiting, maybe 5-10 years before the profit share bonuses kick in. I guess, Robert, it'd be good to get your experience of this. But Jude, also, I guess, your experience of how the employees at the moment feel around the bonus payments.
5 to 10 years is a very long time to wait to see any financial benefit from employee ownership. So our recommendation, which we think the companies we work with always follow, or nearly always follow, is that it's really important to show some benefit from employee ownership as early as possible. And financially, the most obvious thing to do is to start using the income tax-free bonus facility, under which each employee can receive a bonus free of income tax up to £3,600 a year from the start. So even if you don't plan to use that to its full extent, we recommend that within the first 12 or 18 months of employee ownership, employees, assuming profits delivered to justify it, employees do receive an income tax-free bonus, and then maybe that's built up over the years as the debt to the selling shareholders is repaid. But definitely do not wait 5 or 10 years to deliver something like that.
Good, thank you. Jude, your experience?
Well, we aim to give a bonus on an annual basis, so we're looking into that at the moment. So we haven't actually given one since we started the employee ownership. We only did that in April, so it's still early days, but we generally look to give a bonus around Christmas. That's when the year. So the accounts are coming in this next month, so we'll sort something out hopefully for everybody. But there's not been people haven't sort of come asking, "Oh, we're going to get this." They're not that way inclined. It would be good if we could give them, and that's what we're aiming at doing. So we'll have to see.
So Jude, I want to spend a little bit of time, I guess, talking about kind of succession and you stepping into a bigger role as part of that move. How did that feel? And I guess, what role did Sean take on once the move was done? Has he completely stepped back? And how has that been for him?
Well, Sean sort of set up the company 40 years ago. So for him, it's been a massive been quite a big shock to him, really. He's always wanted to try and reduce his hours. He was working full time. The last few years, he's reduced to sort of 3 days. He's now gone down to 2.5 days. And that has been a real shock to his system. He isn't as involved in the company as he was, but he does attend directors' meetings, and he still keeps an eye on what's happening. For myself, I was the managing director before, so there's not a lot of things that have changed, but you do feel like you're more answerable to people when you make a decision. So in the directors' meeting, normally I could just make a decision and it would be on my head. Whereas now I'll discuss it with all the directors and we'll get their approval before we go ahead with anything. So I think the communication side has probably grown, and it's making them feel more involved in what the outcomes are. We also try and get the operatives more involved. We tend to have a toolbox talk every month with all of our operatives, and it's usually left to myself and the contracts manager to do the spiel, do the talk, whatever, and try and get them involved in that meeting. And it's very, very hard to get any interaction. So we're working on that, and we've put it back to them now for them to run the next meeting and try and bring their thoughts to the meeting. And I'm trying to get them more involved and take ownership and take responsibility. But it isn't easy, but it's just drawing them into it. I think it's getting them more involved. There's just looking at different ways of doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, have there been any examples where you've seen maybe individuals who've had maybe a slight change in their mindset or slight change in their behaviour after you've become employee owned?
Yeah, some of them have taken it on, especially in the office. People are far more receptive to it and they realise the importance of it and that they're all parts of it. They do take responsibility, and they do feel like that, everything that they do has a massive effect on how the success of the company. I think for the site operatives, it's slightly different because they're not seeing it on a daily basis. Their job hasn't really changed as such. They still get the information. They go out, they do their trade, they do the job as we expect them to do. But from running the company side of things, they don't actually see that, and they never really did. So it's trying to make them more involved in that, and that's what we're working on at the moment to make them see it in a different way. So it's just drawing them in. They've all been with us for a long time. Some of our employees have been with us over 20 years. So, and we do have a succession rate in that we take on a lot of apprentices, and they're still with us after 15, 20 years. And that we feel like that's been a success. So we want to keep that going. They all want to be involved in how the company succeeds. I've had one young man, he's one of our project managers. He came to me this last week just saying he wants to be a director. That's his aim. He wants to be a part of this company and the continuation of the company. So for me, that's great. And that's what we want.
Yeah. Future succession. So actually that leads me on to one of my kind of last questions, I guess around succession. And, is this something that you've started to think about? What does future succession look like, I guess, for you and your role? And is that something that you see happening from within the company, or are you looking outside, for example?
I would like to think the succession of the company will come from within. For the industry that we're in, we have to have a lot of knowledge of what's required from a lot of different aspects. So for me, I would like to wind it down over the next 5 years. I'd like to train somebody up, take over what I do, and then help them develop and move forward. They would have someone to take over their role, which is just as an important role for the area that they're in. So it's just trying to reduce. So I'm trying at the moment to reduce to 4 days a week, and then that will be a gradual progression. Sean is hoping to finish in a couple of years' time. By that time, he'll be 67, 68. So he does want to get finished working by the time he's 68 so he can enjoy playing with his cars.
Excellent. Okay.
And his bicycles.
And his bicycles.
So we're going to wrap up our discussion for today before we move into breakout rooms. So I'm going to ask both of you to give 3 bits of advice to round off our conversation. What would you say? What 3 bits of advice would you give to the attendees on the call today who are considering becoming employee owned? Robert, we'll start with you, and then I'll go to you, Jude.
Okay, thank you. One of the things you have probably picked up in the course of the webinar is that there are some tax reliefs, in particular for a seller to an employee ownership trust. You won't pay any capital gains tax. However, my advice relating to tax is not to enter into an employee ownership trust transaction, mainly or purely because you're attracted by the tax treatment. It's very important that you feel confident that employee ownership is going to be right for your company and your people. So that will be my first suggestion. Second is actually talk to 1 or 2 other business owners former business owners who have chosen this route themselves, and get the benefit of their own experience, and encourage them to be really honest about what they think's gone well and anything that they feel they could have done better. And then the third is don't rush it. Take your time. It's one of the most important things you'll ever do with the business that you've built up probably over many years. So yeah, take the time to get it right and make good decisions that are going to stand the test of time. Those are mine.
Thank you, Robert.
I just want to reiterate that with Robert saying of allowing yourself time. It is a massive decision. It's you've put an awful lot of blood, sweat and tears into setting the business up and getting it to where you want it to be. So firstly, that is one of the first things I would consider. Secondly, it's make sure you listen to the advice that you've been given. Make sure your company's in a financial position so where you can get a reasonable outcome. Don't sort of price yourself out of the market, and make sure that the company is actually able to pay you what you want at the end of the day, but still function and provide the benefits to the rest of the employees. And make sure that your staff fully understand why you're doing it, so there's no resentment. Make sure that they're aware that you're doing it for their benefit and that it's for them to be able to take forward. And just get that understanding across. But I would just communicate at all times.
Sure. Thank you very much. Some really wise words of advice there. So I know that I'm conscious I've not got to everybody's questions. So this is now your opportunity to go and chat to Jude, Robert, and a few other individuals, depending on the kind of topics you want to talk about. So we're going to have about 25 minutes within breakout rooms. Hey, welcome back, everybody. I hope you all had really good conversations in your rooms. We could definitely see lots of people in and amongst the rooms. So just wanted to do a quick recap, tell you what we've got going on, just as a reminder for you. So I mentioned our training courses that we deliver here at the EOA. So hopefully, having had some of those discussions, especially around things like communication, building that engagement around employees, and some of those key governance roles that you get on EOT boards. These 3 courses I mentioned are really good fundamental skills, knowledge, and experience to have under your belt as you're exploring employee ownership. We do have all of our training courses have a member and a non-member rate. So if you are members of the EOA or aren't yet and are looking to be, you will always get the best price in terms of these courses. They're all delivered online, but really interactively. And so you can find all the information on our website to go ahead and book. And I mentioned some of our events that we do. Again, part and parcel of our membership, the face-to-face EOA exchange that we've got coming up towards the end of the month is, again, it's free for members. All of our other events are always updated on our website. And so as I mentioned, we're going to have our 2026 events coming up soon. So if you want to keep an eye on those. And finally, we've got our conference, as I mentioned, your one-stop shop to getting everything EO. And tickets are on sale at the moment. If you want to, take out your phone and scan the QR code. That will give you all the different information that you need, again, to book as well. And so finally, just want to say thank you. I want to say a massive thank you to Robert and the Postlethwaite team. And a huge thank you to Jude and also Angela as well, joining in those discussions. So thank you very much for your time and your effort and all your words of wisdom. One last thing, we want to make sure that we are delivering these events to the best ways that our attendees want. So we'd love for you to give us some feedback. If you have got your phone handy, if you can take it out, scan the QR code and give us some feedback, we'd very much appreciate it. Oh, thank you, Davina, for your thumbs up. Always love to get. And thank you, Tom and Caroline as well. Canada, excellent. Thank you for attending, and hope you've had a really informative session with us today.